Okay, hello everyone. This is Erica here from Listenwise, and I'm on the teacher support team here. So thank you everyone for joining us today to learn more about how to use technology in your social studies classroom. For those that don't know about us yet, Listenwise, we are an award-winning listening skills platform. And actually, Ben, can you go to the next slide? Some info on there. Thank you.
Sure can. Yep.
Listenwise, we're an award-winning listening skills platform. Just to give you some background for those that are new, and we use NPR stories and podcasts to help students build listening and literacy skills for grades 5 to 12. We have over 1,000 skills on the platform, and they are all accessible to listen to for free in your classroom. And you just have to sign up for a free teacher account if you don't have one yet. And for those of you that are interested, also utilize our interactive transcripts and our other ELL supports and teacher resources and comprehension quizzes. But before I hand it off to Ben, who's hosting this webinar, would just love to hear more about you. So where you're from, what grades do you teach? So feel free to share comments and questions throughout the webinar in the chat box. And then Ben and I will answer any and all questions at the end of the presentation. And you can always email me directly with any questions, and probably the same goes for Ben as well. So without further ado, I'd love to pass it off to Ben. He is an instructor with Edtech Teacher. He's a Google for Education certified trainer and a former teacher and passionate about tech. So he's going to talk to you about how to leverage tech and the resources you can use in your social studies classroom. So Ben, you can take it away.
All right. Thank you, Erica. Hi, everyone. Thanks for joining us this afternoon. As Erica said, my name is Ben Sondgeroth, and I am an instructor with Edtech Teacher. You can see some of my information there on the screen, how to follow me on Twitter, and then also if you go to edtechteacher.org/BenS, that's just got a little bit of stuff about me. It's got some presentations on there, blog posts that I've written, and all that type of fun stuff. So feel free to reach out that way. My email address will be at the end of the slideshow. It's also on that website. So it's ben@edtechteacher.org. I'll just say that right now. So, as Erica just said, feel free to reach out with any questions you have that kind of come from this webinar today. A little bit about myself, just to kind of set the table for you. So I live in Northern Illinois. I'm about an hour and a half outside of Chicago. Out in the middle of nowhere, really, small town, Dixon. I was a high school history teacher for 4 years in Northwest Illinois here in Morrison, Illinois. Got that job right out of college, enjoyed it a lot, transitioned actually after my 4th year of teaching to the director of technology position. So kind of a weird jump for social studies teachers to jump into the world of director of technology. But I did it to help my district go one-to-one with Google Chromebooks. So when I was teaching, I was actually the first teacher to teach with iPads in our school district. So I got a class set of 30 iPads for my history and government classrooms, and then kind of discovered the power of what those devices could do in the classroom. And that's really what kind of spurred me on this technology journey that I've now made into my full-time profession, that I go around and teach teachers how to use technology. And it's been really a fun ride. So when I was teaching with the iPads, and I was teaching world history, US history, and American government, and then I dabbled in a year or two of current events as well. And throughout those courses, I discovered that when I infused technology into my classroom, the results for my students just dramatically increased. Level of engagement increased, student participation increased, quality of work also increased. It was just, and here's the big thing for me too, is it became more fun for me to teach. I didn't think it was possible for me to have more fun teaching social studies than I already did, but when I found myself watching, just as an example, spending a whole period watching student created video as opposed to spending a whole prep hour grading essays, my life became much more enjoyable. If I didn't have a stack of 30 papers sitting next to me, and instead we got to spend 45 to 50 minutes laughing at fun student videos that actually got the content across and reached my lesson objectives in the same manner that an essay might have, it became more enjoyable for me to teach like that. And so as I was kind of going through this journey of teaching with the technology, I realized that I had a passion to help other teachers do this as well. And so that's kind of led me to where I'm at today, where I now don't teach students anymore. I teach teachers, and I go around the country and work with schools on how to infuse technology into all classrooms, not just social studies, but I have a particular heart for social studies. So we're going to look at a couple of things here, and eventually I'll probably turn my webcam on for the Q&A part so you can actually see that I'm a real person and not just a disembodied voice. But we want to talk about how technology can change your social studies classroom. And that really, for me, I already kind of highlighted it out a little bit, but I think the big things that I didn't touch on before were just, the availability of information nowadays is so vast and it's so great. And it's just there's so much content out there for kids to be able to have access to, that why should we limit them just to a textbook? The textbooks don't change, they're there. And I know I get this kind of thing, like, some people who aren't history teachers, by the way, usually like, well, history doesn't change. It's like, well, yeah, but interpretations of history changes. And, you can only fit so much, even though our history textbooks are massive. You can only fit so much in there, and sometimes those stories tend to be a little bit biased one way or another. So what I found is one of the big things that changed when I infused technology into my social studies classroom was I gave access to the world in every piece of literature that my kids could get their hands on through that iPad. Now, obviously, you can't get everything, but as much as they could, everything that was written, they could Google it, they could find it, and then we could explore it together. And so that access to a wider range of audiences and information was just incredibly powerful. But then you also have the ability then to bring in a new piece that often was left out of high school history and middle school history classrooms for a long time, until kind of this new trend of being able to bring this technology in, and that's creativity. And I find that, when I was in high school, I don't think we did a whole lot of that. I mean, we did a little bit, but, like not a whole ton of like project-based learning styles where we're creating things where, we didn't have the ability to record video, And so it was really fun for me to start that process with my kids and introduce these new creative outlets to them. And that's what we're going to kind of cover some of a little bit towards the end of the presentation today, is how we are able to do that with our kids. And then we also can not just be creative with things, but we can create new content. Okay, so students are now able to, say, record their audio in something like Soundtrack, which I'll talk about later. They're able to create, spoiler alert, the next thing we're going to talk about, create custom maps in Google My Maps. So there's all these different things that kids can do with the technology when they're given it. And it's just really powerful to see the results that come from those different things. I was actually giving this same presentation in a little bit longer version in Indiana this last week. And one of the things that came across in the presentation was this kind of premise that I had, and actually it was kind of spur of the moment. I was like, you know what? I hear people always tell me, they're like, well, I never liked history when I was a student in high school or in college because it was boring. But now I really like history, and I wish I would have paid attention in class. And I kind of thought to myself, well, why is that? Like, why do you like it now? And it comes back to now they can engage the content better. Like, there's media out there. They can turn on the History Channel and see an amazing Ken Burns documentary on the Vietnam War that keeps them glued in. Or World War II in HD, also on the History Channel, which is an awesome, powerful documentary on World War II that just locks them in. Well, that wasn't available most likely when they were a kid, and they weren't. Now we can have kids actually make things like that, and that's really a powerful thing. So there's all these different things out there, and so we're going to talk about a little bit some of these different tools that we can use. And we don't have a ton of time, so I don't want to spend too much more time jibber jabbering, but we're going to show you some fun things, including, of course, Listenwise, as to what we can use and how we can leverage these things in the classroom. So the first one's actually called Google My Maps. So this is something that if you're a Google Apps school, okay, so you guys use Google Drive, use Google Docs, any of those things, you can actually create custom maps inside of Google Docs, or I'm sorry, inside of Google Drive. And so I've got this kind of couple screenshots, and I'm actually going to break out and just kind of show you where this is at. But if you go into Google Drive and you go to New, and then you go down to More, you'll see a thing called Google My Maps. And what Google My Maps is the ability to pinpoint locations on a map and then add titles, descriptions, videos, links to those different plot points on a map or pin on a map. And I'm actually going to break out of this here. I'm going to minimize my keynote, and I'm going to bring over one that I made as a demonstration. So here is a Google My Map that I made as Sherman's March to the Sea. So you can see here what I've done is I've dropped in all the different coordinates of the different spots that Sherman and his army, so he split his army into two to march on to Savannah. So I found the different spots where he engaged the Confederacy along this way as he was waging total war across Georgia. And now the students can click on those different spots and see where they're at on the map, get a little bit of a description, but then you can also add in a new layer of directions and their walking directions, and it actually figures out where Sherman's army would have walked to get to those different points, but they only use today's roads. So it's kind of an interesting thing to see how the armies, you know, obviously you can see the different points here where they were at, but then if they were to walk from Atlanta to Savannah, what way they would take nowadays using, say, Highway 23 instead of probably making them a little bit more as a crow flies route. So Google My Maps, really cool, really a fun tool. So I encourage you guys to look at that. I actually just released 2 blog posts on that on Edtech Teacher's blog on how to make these. So they're a lot of fun. So I really want to encourage you guys to check those out. I've got a YouTube video out there too. It's one of my favorite things to do. I actually build them. Nerd alert. I build them for fun, but they are a blast. So you know, just with kids, it'd be really great some of the stuff you can do with them. So that's the first one. So now we want to talk to a new tool, or a different tool, not a new tool, but a different tool, and we're going to talk about the one that's actually putting this webinar on for you guys, and that's Listenwise. Okay, so Listenwise to me, I was approached to this. I saw this last year at ISTE, or this last summer at ISTE, and got a chance to present on it, learn about it, get a tour of it, and just fell in love with it. Like, it's just an amazing different way to kind of re-engage your students. So it's taking those things. And I don't know about you guys, but when I was growing up, you know, I kind of had this stigma of like NPR as like just we're old people tuned in to listen to. And then now as an adult, it's kind of like that history conversation that we talked about before. And now as an adult, I actually, when I travel for work, the one station I always try to find is the local NPR station, because I love the stories that they tell on the NPR channels. And I feel like if I would have had, in the same manner that I was talking about with history, or if I would have had a tool like Listenwise that would have engaged me in the NPR story and made it a little shorter, and it's not just some staticky FM station somewhere, I probably would have fallen in love with NPR a little bit sooner. And so we're going to look at a couple of different screenshots here of Listenwise. And one of the things that I think is really cool about it is the vast amount of content that they have, and then how it breaks down into social studies content for you. And so you can find all different types of NPR stories out there that will fit into whatever you're studying at that time. But then a big thing for me is if you know, maybe you don't have the ability to find, you don't find some sort of story that fits into your perfect lesson that you're doing right now. Maybe you're studying the Progressive Era and there's nothing quite out there like that. That's fine, because one of the things that I like about history is that you can always go to current events and find something about a current event that's relating to an event of the past that you're studying. And Listenwise does that too. So they also have current events that you can go into and create these awesome assignments that your students can engage with. And I'm going to show you here. So this is one of the teacher views. Okay, so as a teacher, what I can do is I can go in and I can find these different stories. And you know what? Screenshots just don't quite do it justice. So let's just go ahead and get out of that. I'm going to bring over my Listenwise dashboard here. Okay, so this is actually a Listenwise assignment that I created. Okay, and you can see one of the cool things about this, or one of the really neat things about this, is that we get this assignment here, the history of the presidential pardon, but then we get a chance to listen to the story. Okay, so our students are able to click on this and hear the actual story as it's being told by the NPR, either interviewer or an interviewee. And then you can also notice down at the bottom where you have the text being highlighted as it's being read. A great benefit, and this happens in the student view as well. So this is a great benefit for those kids that need something to kind of keep track as they're listening to it. And then down at the bottom, one of the just absolute money makers of this whole thing is the ability to get the text help tools. So some of you guys are probably familiar already with text help and the tools that they offer. And text help is really, really great in Google Docs and inside of that, but now they actually bring it into play here, where I can bring in the text help toolbar.
Or Walter Shaw.
And my students have access to the text help toolbar to help them through the assignments. Okay, and so it's not just the auditory piece here with the story, which is great. You can see it's 3 minutes and 49 seconds long. That's a really quick something we can do with our kids, you know, to kind of do a warm-up or an exit, or just a quick hitter in the class, which we really like. And then they have all these different tools that can help support our students along the way. From a student perspective, okay, I'm going to bring up my son, Ryder, here. Okay, so this is Ryder. He's actually only 8 months. He's a little bit young for Listenwise right now, but I've already created him a Google account and, signed him up, and he's my kid, so I get to test him out. But you can see what he gets to do is, as he's going through this story, he gets the story here, he gets the text, and then he also has these comprehension questions that I, the teacher, asked him. So he can go through and answer these questions after or while he's listening to the story. So it's a way to keep check. It's check for understanding, and it's a really cool, neat thing for our kids to kind of look it through. And then he also has access to the current events database. So this is really neat I would have used this all the time in my kids' class. Said, hey, I want you to just go to Listenwise, find a current event that makes sense to you, that you're interested in, listen to the story, and then let's have a discussion on it. So really a cool thing. There's so much out there, and unfortunately we're like almost out of time already, so I can't spend a whole bunch of time left on this, but you can see you have the assignments tab here, where we can see the different assignments that we're going. We have our ability to add classes as well, and then lastly here is our social studies lessons that you can search by. So I just wanted to show you the real view of that and give you an idea. There's a bunch of them there for you. So Listenwise, super cool, lot of fun, and something that if you haven't, I hope you have already checked it out, but if you haven't checked it out yet, by all means do. And here's just some more student previews of what they look like, including the toolbar down there and the short answer questions. Okay, so in my last couple of minutes here, I do want to talk just about 2 more topics. And the first one, they kind of coincide a little bit with each other. And this one actually kind of coincides with Listenwise, because what Listenwise helps our students do is become critical thinkers when they hear content, right? So they're listening to this content, they're asking critical thinking questions, and they're not just accepting the media source. And that's a big thing right now. We live in an era of the term fake news being thrown out all the time. But we also live in an era where fake news is real, and it's a plague on our society right now, where Facebook is, a dangerous place. Twitter is a dangerous place if we don't check where these sources come from, or if we only get sourced from one side of the argument. Okay, so we have this, because every media, we know this as history teachers, certainly, and social studies teachers, I think we do, that media sources are biased. And that's something that I always try to teach my students. But it's not always something that they understand, because when they go home, mom and dad might only have Fox News on, or they might only have MSNBC on, or they might only have CNN on, and that's the only news source that they listen to all day long. So how can we help our students become better at being media literate? Okay, so a tool like Listenwise helps because it teaches them to answer questions and ask questions about content. But then there's also this awesome one out there called All Sides for All Sides. So it's allsides.com. And what Allsides does, let me just kind of bring it back up. Okay, so I'm going to bring this over here so you can see what this looks like. So what Allsides is a website that actually takes current event topics, news of the day topics. So not just this updates every day, and then shows you how those articles are portrayed. Like, for example, this renaming of a school to be renamed after President Obama. From the center, which is The Hill, from the left, BuzzFeed, and then from the right, the Daily Caller. And then students can now click on these different links and see how these different articles are being portrayed in that media bias. And so it's a really cool way to kind of say to kids, like, all right, so I used to do this all the time with kids. I say, hey, I want you to go to Fox News, I want you to go to MSNBC, and I want you to go to CNN and the Washington Post and see how they're covering this particular topic. Well, sometimes kids got confused. They couldn't find the right topic. They weren't finding the right article. This website does it for you. And it's really cool to point kids into this direction. They also have a bias indicator here. So you can go up, you can look and see these different, and you can agree or disagree on what these are. You can also see they have a they have a biased, and my computer's kind of running a little bit slow, so we have to go rate your own bias. So you can see how you compare to others, so kids can take that if you wanted to. Really a neat thing to kind of show your students and help them think critically through different contents. And then you can also see they actually have an All Sides for School program here. That's a neat thing when they partner between Living Room Conversations and All Sides, and it's a really cool program to kind of help kids start seeing all sides of the argument and start conversating about things and not just accepting Facebook as gospel, because we all know how dangerous that can be. My Facebook feed scares me sometimes. Let's just put it at that. So that's a cool media literacy thing. And then the last one here, this is my absolute all-time favorite, the one I have the most experience with by far, was media creation. I highlighted that earlier. I've got just a few different tools here for you guys to consider. The thing that my kids liked doing the most was creating video. If you want some examples of student-created video, I'd be happy to talk to you about that later. We just don't quite have time for me to go into all of those examples right now. So you can reach out to me, contact me through email. I'd be happy to share some of those, talk you through the process, all that fun stuff. But my kids love making video. Kind of some of my main things on making video. It held the students a little bit more accountable. My students were more engaged because they knew that I was going to have them present this to the class. And so what happens in this life cycle of normal, traditional classroom is that, you give the student a worksheet, the student takes the worksheet, they regurgitate all the information that you gave them before the worksheet, they put it onto the worksheet, they hand you the worksheet, you grade the worksheet, and then you hand it back to the student, and the student just throws it away. And, let's take that up another level to an essay and have the same life cycle. Well, that essay could have been one of the best essays you've ever read as a high school history teacher or a junior high history teacher. And the student just tossed it because, oh, I got an A, cool, it's gone. Well, that's sad. And one of the things that's awesome about videos, we have a chance to make video that lasts. Okay, so I have a colleague, Sean McCusker, who works in the suburbs of Illinois, or suburbs of Chicago. And he had a student create a video on Karl Marx and Adam Smith, okay, capitalism versus communism. She made this video, posted it to YouTube in 2013. In the last 4 years, this video has over 220,000 views on YouTube. It's 12 minutes long. It's a high school sophomores project. And there are 220,000 views and 650 plus comments on it. And those comments actually have people debating the merits of capitalism and communism inside of this high school sophomores project. But think of the reach that that's had now. Okay, people are learning about Adam Smith and Karl Marx from that girl's video. Whereas if she would have just wrote an essay, nobody would have read it, except maybe her mom and dad if they were proud. So video creation and media creation is a lot of fun for me. And so some of these tools here, I'll start on the top left and kind of just work my way around the horn here. So the top left is DoInk, Green Screen by DoInk. It's an iPad app that allows you to create green screen videos. Great if you have one iPad, great if you have a class set of iPads. It's $2.99, it's not very terribly expensive, a lot of fun. You can do a lot of cool green screen stuff, and it's pretty easy to use. Then going down to Soundtrap. Soundtrap is an app, Chrome app that is available for Chromebooks and laptops. It's a media recording app, so you can record audio, you can record instruments, and you can put them in and mix and match the sounds, edit, add in loops, really cool stuff. iMovie's the big star right there in the middle, so if you have iPads or MacBooks in your classroom, iMovie's the gold standard for video editing. It's amazing, really fun to use. Kids like it. WeVideo is the next one there. They are able to, they're kind of our Chromebook online video editor. It's a freemium service, so you only get a limited amount of space for free, but it's a really powerful tool. It is iMovie for the Chromebook, so check that out if you are looking for an online video editor. And the last one's Adobe Spark. So, disclaimer, that's a 13 and over tool, but it is really cool. Adobe Spark Video allows you to create really interactive and engaging video content with your kids. So with that, those are our media creations, and we got about 4 or 5 minutes left here. And that's perfect, right on time. So I went kind of fast. I know this is gonna be recorded, but again, there's my contact information. Yeah, I wanna make sure you guys have that. And then I'm gonna actually exit out of the slideshow here, turn my camera on so you can see that I am a real human. And then if there are any questions, I'd be happy to answer them. Hi, everybody.
Hey, Ben, it's Erica here. So everyone just leave questions in the chat box, but I'll kick it off. I have a question for you.
All right.
This was great. I want to use some of these things in my own life. That news source you used is great. Everyone could use some of that in their life. So I want to know what is one of the favorite projects you had your students complete, because it sounds like you're using a lot of great things. So I just want to hear about one of your most memorable experiences.
Sure. So my favorite one that my kids did was actually when I was a government teacher. So I was teaching high school government, and we went into so it was political campaigns, and so it was actually during the election of 2012, and which was a pretty civil campaign. So it was really a lot of fun to talk about the differences between the Republican and Democrats, between President Obama and President Romney. And then we did this Government by the People project, and what it was my students formed into groups of 4 and 5, and it was about a 2 or 3 week long unit where we talked about how campaigns worked. In those groups, they broke up where we had a candidate, we had a campaign manager, and we had 2 marketing people. And those marketing people were designed and were tasked with creating campaign videos or commercials for their candidate and getting that message out. And actually, I didn't do a presidential unit on this because I thought that was too big. I wanted to scope it down to something that was more relatable for the students. And that ended up being having them run for House of Representatives. And so what we did was I said, okay, you're running for your congressional district here in our Northern Illinois. So that way you can talk about the things. So what my kids did is they went out with the iPads and they recorded video. And they made these campaign ads. And they were so much fun. They actually came back. They checked the iPads out over the weekend because we weren't one-to-one yet. So they had to check them out. They checked them out over the weekend. And they came back and they said, sorry, Mr. Sondgeroth, I know you said we only needed to do a 30-second spot and a 1-minute spot. We made 6 videos though. Is that okay? And I was like, I've never had a student say, hey, I know it was a 5-page essay, or you gave us 3 essay topics, but I wrote 15 pages. Is that okay? So that was really cool. They came back with these awesome videos. They were just so much fun. They actually started making attack ads on other candidates in the class, like going after them. And, it was a lot of fun. So that's one that stands out. Another one that stands out was an ancient Rome project where my kids actually were going through and they're making commercials for the Roman army, or actually anything that had to do with ancient Rome. It's kind of a culinary thing. And what they did, one of the kids, I had 2 special ed students, and they're pretty low functioning, and they wanted to partner together for this. And I was kind of hesitant on it because I wasn't sure, I wanted to make sure they could do it, but I just wasn't sure. And they said, well, we've got Miss Kelly, who was my paraprofessional. I said, okay. And so they put together a minute-long commercial making an advertisement for a gladiator battle in the Roman Colosseum. And they had facts, and they had pictures, and they had a voiceover, and they had it edited. And I asked Miss Kelly, I'm like, and they played it in front of everybody in the whole class. But these kids would not have stood up and talked in front of the whole class. And it was just so cool that they made this video, and they had all the content I was asking for. And they didn't have to worry about writing and grammar and things that they were really struggled at, and it was hard for them. And they made this really cool video. So a lot of fun. So those are 2 that really just kind of stand out from that time.
Oh, those are such good stories. I love that.
Yeah.
Lance just asked a question. What was the first media site with Octopus?
That is Do Ink, or Green Screen by Do Ink. So it's an app on the iPad. And I think it works on the iPhone too. I'm not 100% sure on that though. Okay. But Green Screen by Do Ink, and it's a little octopus guy.
Nice. Anyone else? I know we're right at 5:30. If you have any other questions, chat them in the box. But if not, you can always email us later, and we're happy to answer any of your questions. But just want to say thank you to everyone for joining us again tonight. I hope you found it informative, insightful. I know I did. And we will send a PDF of this deck out and a recording of the webinar afterwards so that you guys can have all of that on hand so you can refer back to it. And again, reach out to Ben or me about any questions that you have. And thank you everyone for joining. And thank you, Ben, for presenting. This was awesome.
Yeah, happy to do it. Thank you, guys. Appreciate it. Yeah, like Erica said, reach out if you have any questions. Happy to help. That's what I'm here for. So thank you, everybody.
Bye. Bye.